What is up, everyone? It has been a while. It is your man on fire mentor, David Mailer, coming to each and every one of you live. And today, yes, today, we're going to dive into the center of the fire and we're going to cover a topic of why is it that men need mentors and leaders in their life. And I'm going to give it to you straight. I'm going to give it to you real. Having over probably 10,000 conversations in my life, working with people in the transformational space, the healing space, training my coaches to have these conversations. We always ask a guy, would you prefer that we sugarcoat it or do you want it straight? And you guessed it, 99.9% of the time, the man will say, give it to me straight. About 15 to 20 years ago, I ended up going through a divorce, and I can tell you, nobody gave it to me straight. Nobody called me forward. Nobody called me out. Nobody called me on my BS. Nobody was asking me or getting me to look at the uncomfortable stuff of where could I take ownership? Where could I take responsibility? Friends don't do that. Family won't do that. They don't want to lose your love. And you will need someone in your life that will have your back. And it's hard to have that if we're out to be liked as opposed to somebody just giving it to us straight, so we can get the truth serum that our soul is requiring. So why am I sharing all this? Well, I'm sharing all this because most of us, if we're really being honest, and this at least was me up until my early to mid 40s, if we're really being honest, we're stuck on this carousel ride where we go up a little bit in life and it looks like, oh my God, this is great. My life's going great. And then boom, we come back down to the even playing field. And then we come up again. This is amazing. Oh my God, I'm growing, and we come down again. And it's a sexy allure where we think things are changing, but at the end of the day, it's nothing more than the carousel. It's nothing more than the hamster on the wheel, because we're not really going anywhere. We vacillate in and out of these different stages of being, stages of consciousness, stages of healing, as taught to me by one of my mentors, Donnie, where you go through the stage 1, 2, 3 dance when there are 12 different tiers, 12 different levels, 12 different stages of consciousness available to each and every human being on this planet. I mean, we're all here to grow. Everyone wants that, to live in those higher tiers of consciousness, but so few get there. So where do most of us live? Well, we live in the first 3 tiers of consciousness. Tier number 1 being suffering, where your life is always about you feeling helpless and hopeless and despair, and I don't feel good enough, I don't feel worthy enough, I feel isolated, I feel alone, maybe I shouldn't even be here. And I say this with great empathy and immense compassion, because I've worked with literally thousands of men who come from this space where they really don't know how to get out of this deep, dark despair. They don't know that there's another way. They can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's a very scary place to live, and I understand that. And then there are men that they don't live there, or maybe they finally are done being depressed and done feeling this way. And so where do they go next? They end up going into the next tier of consciousness. And that tier of consciousness is called polarity. Polarity is where you are constantly naming, you're blaming, you're shaming, you're judging, you're projecting. You're always pointing at things outside of yourself as to why your life is the way it is. There's no assumption of responsibility. There's no ownership being taken. No, you think your life is the way it is because it's everybody else's fault. It's always something outside of you where you can point your fingers. And we become addicted to this polarity. We become addicted to the triggers that we have where we're overreactive and we're passive aggressive and we're aggressive aggressive. And also when you're in that tier of consciousness, you are always looking for the magical pill, potion, lotion, genie, savior. Come and fix me. Come and save me. Come and make all my problems go away. So you're completely giving away your power, or you're blaming, naming, shaming, blaming, judging, projecting. And the reality is, no, it won't be. Because anyone or anything that you've ever turned into your hero eventually becomes your zero. You'll knock them down because you'll see it didn't work. And why it didn't work is because you never got to a place of being in your personal power. You gave your power away and you're still looking to things outside of yourself. Now, most of humanity lives here. Is that a knock on anybody? No. Is that a judgment of anybody? No. It's a reality. It's a reality that most of the culture lives here. This is what causes war. Somebody has to be right. Somebody has to be wrong. As long as we get to point our finger, we don't have to take a higher level of ownership and responsibility. Most of us live there. So what comes after that? Well, what comes after that is the third tier of consciousness, the third stage of healing. And what is that called? It's called stuck. You realize that you're the common denominator. You realize that everything that keeps happening in your life is a pattern that you've repeated over and over and over again. My God, it can't possibly be that if I've gone from rich to poor 5 times that it's anybody else's fault. It can't possibly be that it's my 4th wife's fault. No, I have to realize as a man, oh my God, I'm the common denominator. It must be me. It must be me. This is why my life is the way it is. And this is the first time ever that you start to realize that it's not something outside of you. There's not going to be a magical fix. Going into a state of depression or anxiety is not going to help you in that moment. No, what's going to help you in that moment is you have to be willing to get frustrated. You have to be so pissed off and so frustrated that you have enough emotional intensity to finally get you into the next tier of consciousness, which is the baseline of where you want to live, which is where you say enough. Enough. Enough of what? Enough of this. Enough of selling others short. Enough of hiding my love. Enough of not being intimate and more loving with my children and my wife. Enough of living in my head. It's time to take back the ship of my life. I love my life. I'm fulfilled. I'm free. I'm in my power. I'm on purpose. I'm serving my mission. Every man wants that. Every man wants to get to a place where he realizes if he were to take his last breath, it's one of freedom. It's one of fulfillment. It's one of triumph. It's one of victory. It's not one of regret. Well, all of us want that, but how many of us are willing to do the work to get there? How many of us are willing to open our eyes enough to actually recognize, well, where is our energy going? Who are we hanging out with? What are we doing? And most of us, if we're really honest with ourselves, most of us will realize that you're not going to get this from a book. You're not going to get this from listening to an audio file. You're not going to get this from watching this video. It's not happening. That keeps you in the stands. You got to get down on the field. You got to get into the battlefield. You got to be vulnerable. You got to be visible. You got to be willing to do the work. You got to be willing to reach your hand out and ask for support. Get a coach, get a mentor, get someone that's a leader that's already living it, not speaking it. Anyone can speak it. Anyone can parrot back information. How do I know this? That was me. From all the seminars I went to, I was able to parrot the information. But at the end of the day, if your life is not reflecting it, then you truly don't know what you're saying. You don't know it until your life shows it. So we as men have to be mindful, just like in the movie Good Will Hunting, where Will finally cut himself off from his friends. He loves his friends. There's no judgment towards his friends. But for him to live into the fullness of who he is, he had to cut the cord. He had to get out of that environment, quit his job, get away from his friends that meant well, but he came down to their level rather than rising into the fullness of who he is. Who here is willing to do that for their own life? Who is your peer group? How many of you have allowed yourself to be vulnerable enough and ask for help? How many of you have allowed yourself to be vulnerable enough, courageous enough to actually ask for help? Well, some of you might see that as a sign of weakness. The reality is it's a sign of intelligence. We all need to be supported. We all need to be challenged. This is how men rise. Men rise with challenge. Iron sharpens iron. When was the last time you were challenged? When was the last time you were willing to get uncomfortable? As many of the great teachers out there like to say, your growth begins at the end of your comfort zone. Yes, that's true. Are you willing to get uncomfortable? Are you willing to get dirty, do the work, sweat, blood, tears, leave it all on the battlefield? Are you ready for that? Do you have the hunger for that? Do you have the drive for that? Now, most of you don't. Most of you are still in that tier 1 of consciousness, feeling it's helpless and it's hopeless. Again, this is not a knock on you, but you got to find a way out of that. Most of you are in the second tier of consciousness, that second stage of healing, polarity. Still looking for the magical fix. Yeah, this video, I'll just watch this every day. No, nothing will change. I'm going to read that book. Nothing will change. Action will get you to change. Support will get you to change. Challenge will get you to change. Being held accountable will get you to change. Are you ready for that? And then a lot of you will still be in that stage 3, tier 3 consciousness stuck. Every time I want to make changes, every time I start that new diet, every time I start the new exercise routine, every time I get a new job, boom, I fall back down. What ends up happening? You have all this emotional energy that's building a frustration, but then you leak it out. The culture doesn't support you in getting upset, getting mad. Why? Because most men don't know how to be with those emotions in a constructive way. They don't know how to be with those emotions in a way that they could use that as leverage to make change in their life. No, they act it out. They get triggered, they get polarized, and they snap at people. Maybe you hurt yourself, maybe you hurt somebody else. Next thing you know, you push down this emotion called frustration and anger. Now you have no leverage to make change in your life. So you go on that carousel, the merry-go-round. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Nowhere to go. So why do we need a coach? Why do we need a mentor? Why do we need other men that are leaders in our lives? Because energy always wins. Who you hang out with, the sum total of who you're hanging out with is who you become. Look at the people you hang out with. Take a sum total of their income. That's who you become. Look at the people you hang out with, and whatever they're doing, that's who you become. The question is, where are you hanging out? Where is your energy and your time going? Is it going to drugs? Is it going to alcohol? Is it going to pornography? Where's it going? Is it going to weed? Video games? Are you hanging out with people that will push you, stretch you, challenge you, hold you to the fire, and hold you accountable to who you truly are? Men don't want it sugar-coated. Men want to be held accountable. Most of men are terrified to fail. And because they're terrified to fail, because they made it mean, then there must be a worthless piece of crap, they never find out what they're truly made of. All the way back in 2015, after my father's passing, and I went all in on myself, I decided I am going out with freedom, fulfillment, victory, triumph, and success. I'm going to honor my father's life. I'm not going out with regret. I'm not bowing out with my head down. Hell no. I'm going out knowing that I gave, I loved, and I served with every ounce of my being. And I'll never forget, back then, I invested in a coaching program. I invested $100,000 in that program of my own money, borrowed money, credit cards, and whatever I had in the bank. I didn't have it, but I created it because I knew that selling myself and my soul short of who I came here to be as a man is no longer okay. Life is way too short to be afraid that what if I fail? I'm not living from that place. Hell no. No way. So I know what it's like to feel like you don't have money and you can't invest in yourself and you see it as an expense. But here's the truth, gentlemen. It's the cost of your inaction that's costing you the most. It's the cost of you staying stuck, you staying triggered and polarized, you staying in the helplessness of life. That's the biggest cost. It's never about the money. It's about you valuing yourself enough and being courageous enough to know that you matter and your growth matters and you deserve this. Because I see who you are and I know you were born for leadership. I know you were born for an extraordinary and a phenomenal life, to touch so many lives, to live powerfully from your heart. That's who you are, and anything less is an illusion and a lie. Do yourself a favor, dig deep, hang out with people that are playing it at a higher game than you've been playing. Get vulnerable, get visible, get real with yourself. Be willing to do the work. Be willing to be challenged, supported, held accountable, and held to the fire of your true potential. Gentlemen, I love you so much, and I will see you next week on the live. All my love to you. Here's to you rising with passion, with power, and with purpose. It's your man on fire mentor, David Mailer.